Greetings, boils and ghouls. I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and welcome to another entry of Crypt Tuesdays, where I provide retrospectives and reviews of HBO's classic Tales from the Crypt episodes and the comics that inspired them.
You think faces grow on trees, Mr. Webster, like grapefruit? They come from living, breathing human beings.
In today's video, I'm covering Season 2, Episode 2 of Tales from the Crypt, The Switch, the 8th episode total, released on April 21st, 1990, and directed by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, he seriously directed this.
Something.
Before I get to the episode itself, let's chat a bit about the EC comic story that inspired it.
I'm in love, Fulton. I'm in love.
The Switch first appeared as a story in Tales from the Crypt number 45 in December 1954, the penultimate issue before the comic's cancellation in 1955 due to the strict comics code that became forced on publishers. The story was written by Jack Davis and drawn by Graham Ingalls, and despite the title of the story, you will find no new information about the Nintendo Switch 2 in this video. The HBO episode is actually the first Tales from the Crypt episode based on a Tales from the Crypt story. All the episodes up to this point were based on stories from other EC Comics titles like Vault of Horror or Haunt of Fear. Less than 1/4 of Tales from the Crypt episodes are based on Tales from the Crypt stories. The HBO show is really just an adaptation of EC Comics in general. The producers just went with the comic that had the best title for their branding. Back to the comic story, though, The Switch is, fittingly, hosted by the Witch, and tells the tale of Carlton Webster, an old rich fuck who's trying to woo a hot dame named Linda, who'd be way out of Carlton's league if he wasn't rich. The thing is, though, Carlton handicaps himself by trying to make Linda love him for him, keeping his wealth a secret. But this does sort of come with the question of why a smoking hot babe would be making time in her schedule to hang out with a 90-year-old man she believes to be poor when all it leads to is her calling Carlton too old and ugly to marry. I guess Linda maybe gets off on giving incels false hope, no matter their age. Sort of a prototype of e-girls. Despite this obstacle, Carlton is intent on Linda loving him for him by making himself young and handsome, though in that case, Linda would still be in love with Carlton for a superficial reason anyway. But Carlton probably has dementia, so he's not thinking things out. But Carlton's doctor can't work miracles, so the doc instead redirects his elderly patient to a mad scientist named Dr. Hans Faulkner, who looks like Doc Ock and is implied to be a fugitive Nazi scientist, so the guy's probably on the up and up. Essentially, Dr. Faulkner's procedure involves swapping Carlton's head with that of a young man, George Booth, which will cost Carlton $150,000, making Booth wealthy in the process. But having a young, handsome face isn't enough to convince Linda to be with Carlton, because Carlton still has a frail body, looking like the turtle guy. Huh? So Carlton spends more money on expensive gender-affirming care, with Carl swapping his torso with Booth's. But having a six-pack isn't enough to sway Linda when Carlton still has little baby arms and legs, and I'm going to assume a limp dick. So Carlton spends his remaining cash on making a full swap of all of his limbs with Booth, and Carlton attempts to woo Linda one last time, only to discover she just got married to George Booth with Carlton's old body and former wealth. George Booth takes all of an old man's money and then he cucks him with his old body. That's just fucked up, man. You don't do that. That's downright elder abuse. The Switch isn't all that scary of an EC Comics tale. It's more of a sci-fi story with a dark, amusing ending, but the weirdness of it still makes it good fodder for a Tales from the Crypt episode.
I am madly, desperately in love.
Before I get to the episode, though, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, me. Pledge to my Patreon today to support the channel, help it continue to grow, and you'll also get access to weekly movie nights every Sunday, and archive commentaries if you missed the movie nights live. Just $5 a month to get a movie night every week. Here are the movies I'll be streaming next Sunday. Pledge to patreon.com/Dr. Wolfula if you're interested in my bonus streams, and I thank you in advance. Like I said up top, the HBO adaptation of The Switch was directed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and to prove it, he introduces the story while the Crypt Keeper is preoccupied with pumping calcium.
What's the matter with you? Want to keep that 90-pound corpse for the rest of your death?
This episode is one of only 2 things Arnold has ever directed, the other being Christmas in Connecticut, a 1992 made-for-TV movie starring Chris Christopherson and Diane Cannon.
From director Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'll be back.
I'm not joking about that. For some reason, Arnold Schwarzenegger directed a Christmas movie for TNT. Why was Arnold briefly experimenting with directing in the early 90s? Maybe a midlife crisis thing. Arnold was still on top of the world, but the kinds of movies he typically lead were falling out of favor, which led Arnold for a while to explore other niches for his career. He began starring in wackier movies, but he maybe briefly toyed with the idea of being a director as a way forward for his career, taking on lower stakes TV projects before eventually settling on becoming Governor of California as a consolation prize. Arnold might have been a fan of Tales from the Crypt and wanted to direct an episode, or maybe he put word out he wanted to start directing and the producers reached out to him as a publicity stunt to get more eyes on the show. Beyond the novelty factor of Schwarzenegger directing the episode, there's nothing really notable about the switch direction-wise beyond that it's a lot campier than any episodes before it.
What do you think?
It's not what I expected.
The episode The Switch is a very faithful adaptation of the comic it's based on.
I know you think I'd gone mad, but it's true.
Featuring the late William Hickey as the wealthy, decrepit Carlton Webster, right after playing Uncle Lewis in Christmas Vacation.
The blessing!
The late Ian Abercrombie plays Carlton's butler Fulton, a character that only had one scene in the comic, but whose role is expanded on for the sake of giving Carlton somebody to talk to, since EC Comics are so heavy on narration.
But are you sure she's interested in you and not your
Money?
Ian Abercrombie is, of course, best known for such roles as Mr. Pitt, Palpatine in the Clone Wars series, and the Wise Man in Army of Darkness, but he usually just played butler characters. He even played the most famous butler, Alfred, in the Birds of Prey show. Sometimes it pays to be typecast.
Our stock will rise high!
Like in the comic, Carlton is obsessed with a woman 70 years his junior, Linda, played by the late Kelly Preston, and his visit with Linda really gives off awkward visit from grandpa vibes.
I know that I could never marry you. You look too old.
I feel like Kelly Preston, a great actress, was miscast in the role of Linda. She's a very attractive woman, but I feel like this character needs to be a knockout bombshell that somebody would actually throw their life away for. The performance needs to be more vapid and condescending. Kelly Preston gives off kind niece humoring an old man vibes.
Old enough to be my grandfather.
You're right.
Well, despite being turned down by Linda, Carlton doesn't give up on his love. He attempts to get plastic surgery,
I want to look like I'm 30 years old.
but it can only make him look 20 years younger or really fucked up like Mickey Rourke.
I can only turn back the clock so far.
So, like in the comic, the Doc refers Carlton to an unnamed mad scientist who looks like Toby Jones but isn't, complete with a hunchback assistant who never shows up again. The scientist's B-movie laboratory is as horror as this episode gets. It'd be something straight out of a classic Universal monster movie if it wasn't for the water tank filled with decapitated heads.
One day they will write about me. One day they will worship me, the fools.
Like in the original comic, Carlton has to make a Faustian bargain, paying a fortune to swap out his head with that of Hans here, played by Rick Rossovich.
Is Hans.
Yeah, for some reason the name of the doctor in the comic became the name of the hunk.
Excellent genes. I should know. I helped to breed them myself.
I wouldn't be surprised if Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally offered to play Hans in the episode, with William Hickey becoming the Governator, the ultimate physical specimen of his time. Rick Rossovich even has a full-on fight with street punks that feels like Schwarzenegger was meant to perform. It would have been funnier and more impactful of a switch, but Arnold probably insisted in negotiations to just direct the episode as a power move against a fledgling TV show on a yet unproven network, and I can appreciate that.
Don't worry, Mr. Webster. You get to keep your brain.
What I don't necessarily appreciate is the execution of the comic's premise of an old man gradually swapping out his body parts with a younger man. The uncanniness of seeing a young head and torso with withered limbs. There's a body horror to it, but when Carlton first reveals his young face, it's just William Hickey in makeup.
Surprise!
He looks like a wax dummy or a Dick Tracy villain, not like somebody who completely swapped out his head. Linda even comments that Carlton's new head doesn't even look good.
Your face, it's bizarre.
Carlton further swaps out his upper body with Hans, with William Hickey's performance dubbed in.
It's amazing.
Wouldn't Carlton sound different since his upper body has been changed, or were all of his internal organs kept in the new body?
Not bad, huh?
Not bad, it was wonderful.
Despite a date at the beach with Linda going well initially, Carlton's disgusting old man legs still freak Linda out too much to be with him.
What's wrong?
You can't skip leg day. This is an unfortunate limitation of the effects at the time. They could only sell Carlton's aged legs through insert shots.
Let's go.
It just doesn't have the same impact as seeing a young dude with old limbs on the beach all in one shot. Today you could probably accomplish this through digital compositing a la Captain America, but figuring out how to accomplish it in 1990 was probably considered too expensive and time consuming, and they probably already spent most of the budget hiring Schwarzenegger.
Oh, for God's sakes, Linda, what more do you want?
So the crew did the best they could, getting across the idea of the comic, and it gets the job done, but it's not very satisfying.
$1 million a limb.
$2 million?
It's $3 million.
Speaking of which, after the doctor finally replaces Carlton's 3 legs, resulting in Carlton losing his remaining fortune, home, and beloved butler,
I hope you find what you're looking for.
By God, I will, Fulton. By God, I will.
Carlton is now fully yassified and ready to marry Linda. But like in the comic, it's revealed that Carlton has been cucked again through his old body and wealth by Hans.
Hans?
But to make matters worse, Fulton is now Hans's butler. Just dialing the cuckoldry up to 11 here, damn. Hans, Carlton made you a millionaire. You can have any woman or butler in the world. This is cold as ice. The ending doesn't seem that tragic, though. Carlton is young again. He just didn't get the materialistic bitch he was after. He could become rich again after all this, but the Crypt Keeper's epilogue seems to imply Carlton died soon after of a broken heart Padme style, and it's now being probed by CK himself.
It's your lucky day, fella. We want to pump you up.
Goals right here.
A twisted tale.
The Switch is an alright adaptation of an alright EC comic story. Arnold Schwarzenegger was probably right to stick to acting, despite technically being a shitty actor, but the Governor was given a challenging episode to direct as his first ever directing gig, and he did an adequate job, having as much fun as he could under his limitations, fitting in B-movie horror elements that open the door for episodes to be wackier in the future. I give Tales from the Crypt Season 2, Episode 2, The Switch, 3.5 Crypts out of 5.
Won't you ever be satisfied?
I know what I want, Carlton, and you just don't have it.
Actually, I do have some top secret Nintendo Switch 2 information. It's going to have a Mario game on it. Keep this to yourself. I don't want to get sued by Nintendo. If you liked this video, like it, and if you loved it, click the subscribe and bell buttons for more videos. I'd also like to thank these fine folks pledged to my shoutout tier on my Patreon for all of their kind support. Videos like this wouldn't be possible without all their help. Thank you for watching, see you next time. Doc signing out.